There no doubt will be people disappointed today, including some frontline workers, police officers, firefighters, teachers, grocery store clerks that were originally mentioned as being in a higher priority group. What do you say to those groups around the frustration they may be feeling today, knowing that they won't be prioritized?
Well, I know how people feel about this in almost every sector in the economy. I received mail a couple of inches thick from advocates saying that their particular sector, their particular profession deserved a higher priority, and all of the arguments were very compelling. Every component of our society is important, but the science is pretty clear. Dr. Henry, Dr. Ballum have made that clear today. Age is the dominant determinant factor on severe illness and death, and so we've developed our plan with the expectation that Moderna and Pfizer are the only access points we have to vaccinations, and we'll continue with that using the age criteria until such time as that scarcity of supply is changed. And then, as Dr. Ballum has said, we'll amend our program accordingly. But age is the determining factor in this instance, and I would just say to British Columbians, because I know this is how they feel, if given the opportunity to have a vaccination today, knowing that there are other people that are more vulnerable, I am confident that the vast majority of British Columbians would defer their vaccination to protect someone more vulnerable. That's who we are as a society. That's who we are as Canadians. And I know that we will do everything we can to deliver vaccinations to everyone who wants one by the end of September. That's the plan we're on, and we're going to stick with that until more supply comes on stream, and then we'll reassess.
One question I have for you, Dr. Henry, a couple of weeks ago when you were asked about immunizations for the more at-risk population, as in those getting chemoimmunotherapy transplants, you said you weren't sure. So I'm wondering, because trials hadn't been run on those types of populations, so what have you learned since then? And I'm guessing it's from mass vaccinations in other locations, but what have you learned that you now know that will be safe?
Yeah, so it wasn't, safety was not the major concern. The concern, of course, was that these medications, these vaccines had not been tested in people with certain conditions. And so, yes, we've been looking at what others have found around the world, the UK, Israel, but also our National Advisory Committee on Immunization has been reviewing the data in detail from the clinical trials and looking at what we're seeing with immunologists and people who do this for a living around the world. And it really is about not knowing if people who have immune compromising conditions will mount as adequate a response. But it is, and we've put this out on the BC CDC website, it really is a risk assessment that needs to be made by the individual with their clinician. And the one thing we know is that people with immune compromising conditions, severe immune compromising conditions, the ones that we're talking about, do have healthcare providers for the most part. So that's a decision that has to be made. And when we talk about these extremely vulnerable people, they're people that we know are more at risk of having severe illness and dying from COVID, and that's from what we've seen around the world as well. And we will be reaching out to them through, as Dr. Ballum said, through their specialty clinics, through their care providers, to make sure that those important conversations can be had. And of course, if newer vaccines become available that are more traditional, then that we know work effectively in these populations, then we can pivot or switch to making sure that they get those vaccines as well. So that's in the back pocket. But right now, these aren't live vaccines, so that's important. They just haven't been studied in many of these groups.
Hi there. I'm just wondering, with regards to kids under 18 not being eligible for the vaccine, is that a concern? And can we actually achieve herd or community immunity without that subset being vaccinated?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So right now, it's not necessarily a concern in that the evidence still supports that young people are much less likely to get infected and less likely to have severe illness. So that's the good news. Yes, they can transmit to others, but again, the probability is less. It is very likely that once we have more traditional vaccines, they will be available for younger people, and we'll be looking at that and watching that carefully. The reality is that these vaccines have not been approved for use in children. They've not been studied in children. The Moderna vaccine right now, they're doing some trials on children as young as 12. But our focus is on those who are most likely to have severe illness from COVID, and that's where the vaccines. I mean, I think the other side of this is it's really almost miraculous that we have a vaccine that is so effective in older people. So when we were worrying and setting up our programs and thinking about who would be the categories of people who would receive immunization first, so much of it depended on whether the vaccine, what populations the vaccine worked in and was approved for use in. So if we are looking at influenza, we do target younger people, but because they have severe illness, but also because they spread it a lot more. This vaccine, the fact that it works as well as it does in older people, is really a huge benefit for us, because those are the people who are, our seniors and elders are the people who are suffering the most from this virus, and to be able to protect them is the focus of the vaccine program and is what is going to make the biggest difference in the short term. So we will continue to follow the science and the data around younger people. But right now, the focus is on protecting those who are most at risk.